Hi, my name is Paul Willoughby, and this is my wife Jean Willoughby, and we'd like to share some wonderful truth about a man of God we love called Greg Violi. First of all, we want to thank you, Greg, for how you've worked with us through our marriage and affected our lives in so many different ways. I've known Greg now for around 18 years. I greatly appreciate him. I love spending time with him. He's a lot of fun. And I receive so much healing and revelation, truth and growth through his life.
I want to say that I really appreciate and love my father very, very much. And my sisters and I grew up seeing him live exactly what he was saying. And to this day, I trust him. I feel really safe and secure when I'm around him. And I know he's a real man of God. And I've seen so many words come to pass. And he's such a great blessing to us. And if it had not been for my father, I know that we would not be married now and living the life we live. Because of his counsel and help, it is such a tremendous blessing. And I've gotten to witness personally many people be changed and completely transformed by what's coming out of him, the word that comes out of him. And yeah, I really love him.
Hi, my name is Jansen. This is my wife, Sarah.
I remember especially, I was connected with some people that knew him in the beginning, and they would talk about him a lot. And I remember thinking, why do they always talk about this Greg? What's up with this guy? And then I was in a first meeting with him. And so I grew up in a Christian family, and my father is an evangelist and preaches, and my home was extremely dysfunctional. And so when I would hear people preach or whatever, I remember I would always I wouldn't believe them. I would, just have mistrust against them. And then I remember when I heard him speak for the very, very first time. I have never experienced something like that. He spoke, and it was like life was coming out of his mouth, going inside of me and doing something inside of me. And I didn't know that because I've never experienced something like that in my entire life. And without anyone telling me anything, I knew that what he was saying were words that were directly from God, and it had nothing to do with him. He was just the person releasing them.
I know Greg Violi now since 10 years. The first time I saw him was on YouTube. I watched one sermon of him, and something in him really drew me because I felt that what he's saying is truth. And back then I was a big mess. Every area of my life was a big mess. I had massive financial problems. I was in deep depression. I had an eating disorder. I was extremely hard. I had no love, no compassion. I could not receive love. I could not give love. I was just a hard person walking around and was very insensitive. Through his words, my life started changing more and more. And the more I listened to his words, the more I changed.
Hello, I'm Joel.
And I'm Katarina.
I would like to share a couple of things about Greg and Marie Violi. In the short amount of time that I've known them, 7 years, there's two situations that stick out the most, that are the most encouraging situations that were keys to me becoming the man that I am today. The first one is the very first time that we met Marie Violi. I asked her a lot of questions, and then I made a statement at the end of all of these questions, and I just simply said, it must be hard for you to move here to Germany. And without missing a beat, she said, no, I love it. And she was really excited. And for me, this was a really big deal because all of the other men that were in my life at this point, their wives hated their lives. So this was one really big key for me.
What really touched me about him was the way he treats his family. He has only daughters, 4 daughters, and a beautiful wife. And this was like one thing that I noticed, like right in the beginning, the way he treats his family and his daughters. And it healed something so deep in me to see how he honored his family and his children. To see a man treat his wife and daughters like that with so much honor and love really restored something deep inside of me.
I got to know Greg Violi as a very, very authentic person. He's really an open book, and I think I don't know anyone who is that real as him. He is the same person at home, like he's in the open, as he is with people, and that makes him a very, very safe person.
Just observing him and just being with him without talking is tremendous. It changes you in seconds. It encourages your spirit. It lifts your soul. Always when you're with him, you always get something, and you always can take something with you, and you always feel afterwards nearer to God.
I want to share some things that are real personal. So I've seen Greg in many different situations, traveling, tired, hungry, very normal situations. I've seen him talk in front of hundreds of pastors in different countries, in Africa, in Europe, in America. And what impresses me greatly about Greg Violi is how he is always seeking the kingdom. And that's not just a religious term. The way he lives for the kingdom is incredible. I mean, without the Holy Spirit, I don't know how he could do it, but in every situation, this is with his family at home, this is in his private life, this is in open ministry, it's in traveling, it's how he treats people wherever we go, his honor and respect for other leaders. He's always seeking for the kingdom, and that's deeply convicting, and it's very real. And yeah, I really appreciate that. That's probably affected my life more than anything, is his worship unto the Lord in the very little things, which means so much to God.
One thing I really appreciate about him is the truth and the reality he walks in. So whenever I meet with him or I speak to him, I know, for example, when I ask a question, I will get an answer that is true, that is absolutely true. There's no lie in there, it's not a half-truth, it's the total truth and only the truth. So he's a man, he has nothing to hide, he's an open book, and that makes him a very safe person to be around.
When I'm with Greg Violi and Marie, I feel so filled up. My heart is just full of joy and full of love, because they release this really deep and pure love in everything they do. And a lot of times it's with his humor. Greg is so funny, and what I really appreciate about him is that when he makes jokes, it always releases really just love and joy, and it connects everyone that is around.
And from an early age, the Lord called me to minister with him, and God created something really special between me and my father, and it is such a blessing, it's such an honor to minister with him in music, and he has taught me a lot. My father has given me a lot of words, and what the Lord shows him about music is incredible, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
He spoke over me that I will have my own business and that I'm a really gifted woman, and I never thought that about me.
The first thing that I really feel that the Lord was able to do in my life through Greg was actually really simple, and that was growing up in a Christian home and being surrounded by pastors and pastors' kids and that whole world for my whole childhood, there was a degree of performing and kind of looking away to kind of fit that world, and it was all outwardly. And one thing that came to mind was that when I first met Greg and when I first became part of this body, none of that stuff mattered. Outside stuff didn't matter. It was all inside stuff that mattered. And it explained why, being a Christian for years, there was really little to zero fruit. And it was because all the outside stuff was addressed and not the inside stuff, until I came and became a part of this body and became a part of with Greg and his ministry, did things start to really change in my life. And that was because the outside stuff wasn't being addressed. It was the inside stuff in your heart. That was how the Lord was able to really work in my life through Greg and his ministry. Was the roots of the problems were being taken care of, not the fruit, not the outward stuff. And so years later, the impact that has had on our lives, both of us, is just, we can't even put it into words.
Yeah.
The fruit, the long-term fruit, the finding who we are as children, as true sons and daughters of God. We would have never been able to come into that if things weren't deep within us, brought out by what this ministry brings.
He would not try to convince you of his opinions or something. He would just like show the Father's love to you, and he would like show you what God thinks about you. And then he would also point out that it's your choice. Whatever you do is your choice. And I like that there was no pressure, there was no manipulation. And so I appreciated this about him.
When I started to know Greg, it's about 6 or 7 years ago, I had extreme problems with my mind. I was extremely depressed, shortly before a mental hospital, and had suicide thoughts, and I had no control over my life. And always when I called him, he was his answer was so perfect, because he was in the spirit, that my problems disappeared in seconds. And that not just happened 10 or 20 times. If I should guess, maybe 500 or 1,000 of times it happened in my life in this 7 years. And it changed my life, because it's not just the right word he says, it's the answer to your heart. And it's not just empty, and it's not just him feeling good, saying the right stuff, but it's helping you indeed.
And especially, he's not only telling you the truth or the right thing, but he's living it. And that's why it is so authentic, and why it has so much weight and power if he's telling you something, because he himself is living what he's talking about.
One thing I would like to share, I've known them for maybe about 10 years, and you know, you will hear them say a lot that they have no favorites, and I can just testify that's the truth. I've seen them in private and I've seen them in public, and they treat everyone the same. And ever since they've known me, in the very beginning, I was a very good Pharisee, and I was I would say very deceived and very far from God. And they knew, both of them knew from the beginning, that's where I was at. And they never treated me any different than they treat me today. And I really, really appreciate that. And I know I would never be where I am today if not for them, because they have always seen my heart, and they've never judged me by my outward appearance. And I'm really, really thankful for that.
And what I can say about Greg Violi is that the substance of love comes through him, and the substance of the Father and His love comes through him. And I've experienced that many times again. And it can come through just different things. It could be that he's speaking in a meeting, but it could also be that we're just playing basketball, and just the way that he's interacting, you feel special and you feel loved and honored, and this changes us.
I know this man has proven himself to be faithful, to be authentic, to be real, to be someone who really puts the needs of others first and not his own needs. So he would really deny himself and lay down his life. And
to observe him, how he treats people, is extremely touching, and just nothing that I have ever seen in Christianity.
There's so much honor.
Yeah, and he has a gift, like a prophetic gift, and he knows and sees a lot about people, especially the ones that are close to him and that he knows. So like he knows so much about us, but he always treats us with so much honor and kindness, and like he doesn't make differences between people. You never feel like, okay, this one is more spiritual, that he gets like a special treatment, and the other one has more like
problems in his life,
problems, and then he is looked down at. You never feel that he honors the least, and this is really like, it touches me so much to be, and it's like really a high honor for me to be a part of his life, and to see how he treats the people that are around him, and that and he just lays down his life for them, no matter how they behave, and this is like something extremely special.
And another one was before we moved over here to Germany, Greg and Marie were at our house and we were having a lunch together, and I was sharing with Greg how bad of a child I was and how bad my childhood was, and he dropped a spoon in his bowl and he hit the table and he looked at me and he said, "You were not a bad child, but they put this perception in your brain, and so that's the way you saw yourself." And this was a really big key, because this was the first time that somebody had stood up for me. And he's a man, and he wasn't upset with me, and he was not rebuking me, but he was just speaking this truth into my life, and it was a massive key for the change that has happened in my life.
One other thing that changed my life forever was when I was a teenager, I was very rebellious. That's what I was called, the rebel. I was the one that did all those bad things. I went out in the world, I did all the wicked things and all of that. And then later on I went back to the Lord, but I always carried this deep shame and guilt for how I behaved and how I was and what a sinner I was and all of those things, because that was obviously my fault. And the first time I ever sat down with him and just talked, he asked me about my childhood, and then I just started saying how rebellious I was and whatever. And I remember that he looked at me, and he was the first person that ever said to me, "You know that you behaved that way wasn't your fault." And that was the start for me of God really touching a real deep thing inside of me where I was pretty messed up, and that was the root cause of most of my problems. And that's when the Lord started healing me, and I started experiencing love and acceptance and all of those things starting from that, where Greg said that to me and really released love and honor and truth and all of those things. So,
and I like it that he's just a real person you can relate to. He's not like this super spiritual person, but he's absolutely real, and he's only like dealing with real problems. Like, to give you an example, I had a problem with a certain person that would they would not talk so nicely to me, and they would ask questions all the time. And so I would sit in my car with him and tell him that. And then he smiles at me and says, you know what? I think you're just afraid of people asking questions. You're just afraid of being found out. And so I immediately knew that was the truth. I immediately knew it was a total truth. So when we dealt with that and he prayed for me, what happened was the love of God just came into my heart as a flow of fire came into my heart. It changed me from the inside. And today, I mean, I'm totally changed. I have no problem with people asking questions. I can just give a straight answer. I have nothing to hide. I don't have any fear to be found out anymore. And I'm just changed. I mean, and that is absolutely amazing.
I've lived with a single mother, so I never had a dad. And I never could relate to a person as a father or a role model, or especially not God as father. I never had a concept or never had an idea, or even I never knew that God is a father. I got to know then Greg Violi. I remember the first time I felt really, I think for the first time, really special. The way he treated me, and he acted towards me and he talked to me, gave me for the first time a feeling of being someone who is special, someone who is capable of doing things. So, and that really changed a lot of things in my life, tremendously. I was not able to work, I was not able to handle relationships, I was not able to manage basically a daily life, and especially not having anything to do with God. So, and since I was with Greg Violi, all those areas got impacted on a big level, where I could say today that I'm a fantastic worker. I have a relationship to a wonderful person. Every day is a special day, basically, without exaggerating, just because I like myself, I like who God made me, my temperament, my look, and that's all because of that one man who really took time for me, also spoke truth about me, who brought me forth as the true person that I am, who encouraged me to do things what I before thought would be impossible, who blessed me in so many things. He's a tremendous man of God. He's a true prophet.
What I appreciate about Greg Violi is that you never see two versions of him. He's always the same person. Yeah. And I come from a religious background where you had the father at home, and then you had the father in church. And in my family, it was like two different people, two different person. And so I appreciate that you just meet the same guy, and he is just himself. And I know so many times he would just lay down his life in order to show the Father's love to me, to us.
Another thing was just, I haven't seen marriages where people genuinely love each other, treat each other well, and like each other. And so I actually didn't think that was even possible without being mean and kind of like nagging and just kind of like, yeah, be mean in a fun way. And Greg and Marie were the first people where I've really seen they just like each other and they treat each other good, and something like this is possible. You can have an amazing marriage. You can have a beautiful family. You can have a family where the parents love each other, where the children love each other, where the children love the parents. And so that gave me great hope because I didn't experience that.
He's a really honest person, and what I appreciate very much is that he's very sensitive. He's very sensitive to the needs of people. He's very sensitive to almost everything, to the emotions of people, to the feelings, and he has a tremendous kind heart, and he's someone who really cares for people.
Yeah, and one more thing I wanted to say is what I appreciate about Greg is he's really honest, and he will change his theology about what he believes when he's preaching, because God shows him something is not right, and he will not be so proud to just hide it and don't tell it and just hold on his wrong theology. He will say it, he will humble himself, and he will change his theology if he realizes it's not the same like the Word of God is, and then he is always so open to the Holy Spirit and to the voice of God, and that's really special, which I never have seen a man doing that.
And also the very first time I heard him was the meeting, and I was sitting there, and yeah, I didn't understand anything that he was saying, but something inside of me was just receiving the words, the truth that he was saying, and I just was sitting there and I just cried and cried and cried, and I have never experienced something like that before. I just tried to figure it out, but now I know that it was the love that came through him. God's love was touching me, was really touching me deep inside of me, and changing me, and also starting to make my heart soft again.
Also, he was the first one that I really felt extreme love coming through him, and I know it was the love of the Father that I never saw coming through somebody else. So I have to say he's an extreme vessel for the Lord. I never saw somebody else who is such a vessel for the Lord. Yeah, since the time I started listening to him, I am a totally changed person in every area of my life, and the reason is he. I know that. I know it's the Lord through him that spoke life and love to me, and even saw me how I am when I was in a big mess. And today I am not a big mess. I am free in every area of my life. I'm free to have my own business. I'm married. I have one little girl. We have an extreme happy life. I never could have imagined to have such a happy life. I have to say that Greg Violi is an extreme role model for me, because he is really sensitive to his family. He's really sensitive to us. He's denying himself every hour of the day. He helped us so many times. He helped us financially. He helped us in every area of our life. He speaks truth to us. We find solutions with him for problems. And I have to say, he brings heaven in every area where he goes.
I never experienced so much love and honor through a man, and he's really a person that will lay down his life, and if someone is needy, he will take time to be with that person and to help them. And that is something I really appreciate about him. He always makes you feel very, very special. He always makes you feel important, and you never feel like you are lesser than him, because he always honors people on a very, very high level. And this is something I always was very, very touched by. And my life would not be the life I have now if I didn't have met him.
And one thing I will never forget is when Daniel and we talked with him and Marie about our marriage, and he shared about him and his wife and his marriage. And while he was sharing about it, there was so much love manifesting that Daniel and we just both had tears in our eyes, because it was this love was the substance. It was not just empty words. It was really changing us, and I will never forget this.
If you spend time with him, you have a lot of fun. It's never boring. It's always a lot. It's thrilling. It's adventurous.
It's never a dull moment.
No, and also when he makes jokes or he's funny, he's very sensitive, but he's never with an intent to hurt anybody. And he's a person that you really want to be around.
Yeah, and our family, we have 4 children, and they love him. They love their grandfather very much. And we're just honored and extremely happy for the father that God has given us. And yeah, he's a real man of God.
Yeah.
We could say so much more,
Yeah.
but we wanted to make this short, so